Well, welcome to Standards for Library Services for the Incarcerated or Detained. My name's Brandy Buenafe, and I'm going to talk today about how to begin using the standards. You may have received your copy and you're not sure where to start, so this is the presentation for you. So the agenda today is I'm going to do a brief introduction of myself. I'm going to talk a little bit about stakeholders and advocacy. Then I'm going to give 3 examples of how to use the standards, ways that I've used them, and then some key takeaways. So first, like I said, I'm Brandy Buenafe. I'm the principal librarian for the California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation. We're a large correctional organization in California, and we have, for the last 20 years, included the title Rehabilitation as part of our mission. This has made us a good place to start with looking at how to implement programming in our libraries. I have been with the department for 17 years. I started out as a librarian 2 weeks after I graduated from library school. I was serving as a librarian at a level 4 facility, which is our maximum security. I did that for 5 years, and then for 2 years, I was a senior librarian in another facility. And then the last 10 years, I've been in this role as the principal librarian. In this role, I'm responsible for policy creation, procurement support, and professional development for library staff in the field. And then once I got into this role, I realized how valuable some more business background things would be, and I went back to school and got my MBA. So I have my MBA as well as my MLIS. So the first thing to think about when you're thinking about the standards is who are your stakeholders? So if you're like myself and you work in a correctional community, start there. You have custody, you have other free staff. They might call them something else in your jurisdiction, but folks that work at the institution that are not custody, and then medical staff. There's also the wider library community, your public libraries in your area or areas where your population are paroling to. Academic libraries. In California, we're working with colleges and universities to provide opportunities for our incarcerated population to complete their education. So we have academic libraries that we're dealing with, and then community law libraries. Um, Often there are folks inside who are looking as they transition out to continue legal work, and you want to have good relationships with your law libraries. And then there's community partners, nonprofits, colleges, other organizations that might be interested in the work that you're doing. And so when addressing issues since the standards have been released, I go to them first before I have a stakeholder conversation. And I found that the standards are very robust and they provide lots of justification for my ask or my position. And I'll share more about that as I share the examples. So in the examples, I'm going to talk about introducing the standards to colleagues and to management. I find that working with correctional educators, which is the model in California, we're like a school library. They respond well to standards because they're used to that from the education background. So this has made a common language when interacting with my colleagues and then with management. So my first example is a leadership academy. So an academy is being developed to prepare future leaders of adult schools in California correctional facilities. And I was asked to share what was important for those leaders to know about our libraries. And I went to the standards and found 2 standards that really encapsulate what we do in our libraries. So I'm going to read standard 1.1, which is library access to all despite locations within the institution. It says all individuals who are incarcerated and staff employed at the facility should have physical and/or remote access to library materials, services, and programs. Access to resources should be adapted for alternate housing, such as administrative segregation, hospitals, crisis beds, quarantine buildings, etc., and should not be denied or restricted based on security level or lockdown protocols. That's the most important thing to know about our libraries, is that they're for everyone. That it doesn't matter the commitment offense of an individual or their behavior while they've been incarcerated, that they're entitled to access to the library no matter where they're housed throughout the institution. This is different than a lot of programs in our institutions that are based on behavior or a point system or something like that. But just knowing off the bat that everyone is entitled to access is very important. And having that as the very first standard really sets the tone for the rest of the standards. And then standard 6.1 is about reading and writing promotion. Let me get that. Here we go. It says the library should offer a variety of literacy programs to support users in improving their ability to read and write and engage in creative expression. Literacy and reading programs that promote education goals, creativity, and lifelong learning should reflect those offered in public or school libraries. These programs may be offered solely through the library or in collaboration with educational and creative programs inside and beyond the facility. They may include peer mentoring opportunities. And then it gives some examples such as book clubs and discussions, journaling and daily writing activities, poetry readings and open mic events, debate teams, research sharing and research skills, or how to translate information from research into a usable format, and creative writing support, such as National Novel Writing Month or writing opportunities offered by external partners, such as PEN America or Lighthouse Writers Workshop. That really situates the library, that standard, as an important adjunct to the formal education department. It shows that our programming is literacy based, that our programming is based on a need to help people prepare for life once they release, but also to help them be better citizens while they're incarcerated. And the picture on the screen is of some folks that participated in an essay contest at Ironwood State Prison, which is in Southern California. And the looks on their faces say it all, I think. That they were recognized for their hard work, for their skill, for their merit, and were rewarded for that. And that helps with our rehabilitation because it allows everyone to be seen as an individual and shows the transformative effect of libraries. So I put that as my second item that I would want future leaders of adult schools in California correctional facilities to understand, that the library supports reading and writing. The second example I have is about digital literacy. And the picture on the screen is a little dark, but it's of a touchscreen kiosk that allows access to our legal library for people in administrative segregation. That's a restricted movement building, and it's hard for them to get out to the library, so we bring the library to them in these kiosks. So management directed the creation of a digital literacy curriculum to be used throughout California correctional facilities. And I was included on the committee that was putting that together, and I wasn't sure where to start. So I turned to the standards, and there is a standard on information technology. So this is standard 6.2, information technology. It says access to digital resources and instruction in the use of current technology should be provided regardless of the availability of internet access. When internet access is provided, broadband access is highly recommended. Access to constantly evolving information technology is essential for connecting users to resources that will enable them to reintegrate upon release and/or pass their time beneficially in the institution if release is not likely. Digital literacy programs should be continuously available to all users and should include training in the following skills: basic knowledge of computer components and computer fundamentals, find and open files, save in different locations, copy and paste functionality, formatting, etc. Elements of word processing and spreadsheets, internet use and safety, online communication, online research methods in different browsers, copyright, and fair use. And then the standard goes on to say that a facility information and communication technology committee should be established involving professional librarians, folks from information technology, education staff, and users. So this standard sets out what kind of information technology literacy should be available to the incarcerated. And having that spelled out that way, I was able to share with the team. And that, along with standards from other organizations, are the basis for the curriculum that's being developed to allow for all incarcerated persons in California, regardless of whether or not they're enrolled in education, will receive some digital literacy curriculum and some digital literacy instruction. And just anecdotally, this is very important. We have people who have been incarcerated for decades who are releasing now that some laws have changed in California, and they may have never interacted with a touchscreen monitor before. Um, I When I began work in 2007, I spent some time explaining to a gentleman how to use our law library software, and he listened very attentively as I went over where you click and what boxes come up and what you enter and where you click next. And we went on through that. And at the end, I asked if he had any questions. And he said he had one question: what did I mean by click? And I realized that I needed to take a step back and explain what the mouse was and how that interacted with the computer, something that I took for granted. So digital literacy is very important, and the standards have been a place that I've been able to go to get support for that. And then my final example is collection management. Um, Due to budget concerns in California this year, I was asked to show my work and how I came to my budget ask for purchasing books. And I turned to the standards. And once again, they were able to help me to demonstrate the need for the amount that I was requesting. So this is in Standard 7. So Standard 7.19 talks about the number, type, and format of materials in the collection and how that will vary based on population size, makeup of the population, etc. But 17.19.1 says books. At least 10 print books per capita for institutions with a capacity of more than 150 beds, or at least 2,000 total print books for smaller institutions. So that was the first one. I had a place to start. I could look at the inventory of my libraries and see, based on the population, where were they when it came to how many books they should have based on the standard. Standard 7.23 talks about collections should be curated. This helps me because sometimes people ask, well, can't we just um, create a list of books and have library staff pick from those books when it comes time to ordering? And this helps me to explain that no, the community standard is that they're curated, they're specific to the population that's being served. Um, a population at one of our Southern California institutions might have totally different wants and needs than a population at a Northern California facility. And standard 7.23, let me just read that. Says collections should be curated through the process of regular weeding, removing items that are out of date, in poor condition, or underused, and enhanced continuously and systematically with new acquisitions that represent a broad range of ideas and viewpoints and reflect the changing needs and interests of the user population and the wider world. And then finally, 7.2610 talks about having a budget for purchasing new current library materials. So there is often a question about could our libraries survive as based on donations from external institutions? And the standard is that we have a budget to purchase new current library materials. This has informed my conversation with the people in my agency who are involved with the budget. And then now it's moved on to the Department of Finance. So I don't yet know the results of that conversation, but I know that having the standards as my backstop and my foundation was able to make me feel confident in the numbers that I was asking for. So some key takeaways. The first is that people are impressed that there are standards. Before these standards came out, our standards hadn't been updated in decades, and it's hard to use those when making asks or talking to other colleagues or management that are in fields that have more up-to-date standards. So when I was speaking to my colleague who's in charge of correctional technical education about the Leadership Academy, and I mentioned that there were standards that I was going to be using to base my talk on, he was very impressed by that and very curious about the standards. The second takeaway is to don't reinvent the wheel. That many people worked very hard to create these standards, and they are there to help us. And when it came time to look at the digital literacy curriculum, I had it spelled out for me in the standard what it meant to be digitally literate, understanding computer components, understanding word processing and spreadsheets, understanding internet safety, understanding copyright. But these were all already spelled out, and I didn't need to reinvent the wheel. And then my third takeaway is that it's always good to have backup. When it came time to talk about the budget, that can be a fraught conversation, especially in our current climate. And knowing that I wasn't making up numbers out of thin air made everyone more comfortable, and made me more confident. And then I wanted to invite, if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me either by email or Teams, and I'd be happy to share more information to brainstorm ways that you can use the standards in your own situations. and just to get to know the wider library community better as we work through instituting the standards together. Thank you very much.